Hello YouTube, Happy New Year's. I'm recording this video on 1st of January, so it's just been New Year's, but this video will be uploaded right before Season 12 starts. So Season 12 starts on January 7th on pretty much all servers as far as I'm aware of, at least on EU West and NA. And today's video is going to be about the placements. So placements you have to play every single season as soon as the season starts, and it consists of 10 games. And I basically wanted to make a guide on how to win as many of these placement games and give you guys a few tips and tricks on how to maximize the highest rank you could possibly get from your placements. So, as I said, it's 10 matches, and it says right here, provisionals, also called placements. Entry into a rank ladder compromises a provisional period that determines the player's rank on through the end of the period. During this time, there's no loss of LP nor promotion series, and the player's rank is private. The current provisional period is 10 matches. So basically what they mean is, if you lose a game, you don't lose any LP. And if you get to... Now, there are no promos anymore in between divisions, but there's still promos from Gold 1 to Platinum 4. But if you go from Gold 1 to Platinum 4 in your first 10 matches, then there's no promo for you to play. So that's why it can be quite important to get those important victories, so you don't have to play an additional best of 5 series in order to promote. So, the tips that I have for placements is, number 1, get a duo. When you have a duo, then you can rely on at least one person on the team, and you're making sure that that one person on your team is at least not trolling or griefing or being toxic, and that one person will at least try to win the game as much as you want to win the game. So that will make your placements a lot easier. The second thing is, whenever you enter a champion select, basically copy all the names in champion select and then go to op.gg and then just post them in here, and then get the information of all of your teammates. And the things that you want to be looking at are, do they play their main role? Do they play their main champion? And are they on a losing streak? If they're on main role, that's good. If they're off role, that's not so good. If they're playing their main champion, that's good. If they're first timing something, that's not so good. If they're on a winning streak, that's good. If they're in a losing streak, that's bad. And if they're just like flipping, like 1 win, 1 loss, 1 win, 1 loss, then that's completely fine. Now, I'm not sure if op.gg or any other of these websites, you can use whatever, are giving you information when the ladder resets. Maybe it will give you some season 11 stats, maybe it will give you some pre-season 12 stats. I'm not sure, but if not, then just go onto each individual profile and then check their season 11 stats. That way you can see what were their remaining in season 11, what champions were their remaining in season 11, and if it's the same role and the same champion that they're playing, that means that that player most likely is also trying to win as many of their placement games as you are. So, the next thing is, let's say you have a bunch of people who are autofilled or not on their main champion. Then what should you do? Well, you should try and dodge all of your games where you don't have people on main role and people like basically not tryharding. The reason why is because whenever you dodge, you lose 3 LP for your first loss and you lose 10 LP for every other dodge for the next 24 hours from the first dodge. So basically how it works is, let's say at 1 AM, let's do 1 PM. We do 1 PM. You dodge your first game, you lose 3 LP. Then every single game that you dodge until 1 PM the next day will be minus 10. It will be minus 10, minus 10. Let's say this is like 2 PM and this is 3 PM. And then when it's 1 PM the next day, it goes back to minus 3 LP for dodging. So what you can do is, instead of... I know that you're not losing any LP if you lose a game in your placements, but you're losing out on a ton of LP gains, and I'll get into that in a second. So if you're playing with a duo, then you can split the dodges. So if first you dodge, you lose minus 3. Then you tell your duo, yo, you should dodge. then he takes the -3. Then you take the -10, he takes the -10. You basically just have double as many dodges as you'd have if you're playing solo queue, and that's why it's really, really smart. Another thing that you can do, if you're really afraid of dodging like a ton with these -10 LP gains, like this, then don't play all your placement games in one day. I actually recommend not doing that anyway, but try and like spread them out through as like many days as possible. Make sure that you're not tilted, make sure that you like feel good on that given day, and that you feel focused and ready to try hard. So as I said, you have 10 matches, you can spread them out. Like, I mean, one day probably not too good. 2 days, it's where it starts getting like acceptable, but try and do it like 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 days, just to spread out the games so you're not just spamming games and just getting through them instantly, because they're quite important, and just spamming through them doesn't really give you the best results. It's better if you are taking it slowly at the start, and then basically just making sure that you're fully focused and doing your absolute everything to win the game. So another thing with the placement system is that you can't skip in your placements. So if you have a really high MMR, basically if you're gaining +20, let's say +23 or more, then if you are Platinum 4, let's say you're Plat 4, and you're gaining +23, by the time that you get to Plat 4 100 LP, so you get to 100 LP, instead of going to Platinum 3, I can press P. Instead of going to Platinum 3, you're skipping Platinum 3 and going to Platinum 2. This is also why your placement games are important, because the more games you win, the higher MMR you have, and the higher win rate you have, the higher MMR, the better LP gains, and the easier it's going to be because you can skip an entire division. So you can do a bunch of tricks here. So basically what you want to try and do is to get, let's say you are on your 9th game, you're about to queue into the last game, so your 10th and final game, and you're currently sitting at Platinum 3 or any tier 3 division, and you are sitting at, let's say, 80 LP. This means if you win the very next game, you go to Platinum 2. Something like maybe 10 LP. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe 5, 10, 15, something like that. And you would think, oh, this is really good. I get 1 tier higher. Well, you can actually skip a few wins, because if we go back to it, you cannot skip divisions in your placements. But you can skip divisions after your placements. So if you're sitting at Platinum 3, 80 LP, what you essentially want to do, instead of playing that final game instantly, and if you win, ending up getting to Platinum 2, then you promote, then what you want to do is dodge from Platinum 3, 80 LP, down to Platinum 3, let's say 60 LP. Or 57. So you take the -3, then the -10, and then you take another -10. And then you're wondering, well, why would I do that? Well, what is going to happen is then you win the next game, you're Platinum 3, and you'll be around like 90 to 95 LP. And then if you win the very next game, instead of going from Platinum 3 to Platinum 2, you're going to skip Platinum 2. You skip Platinum 2 and you go to Platinum 1 instead. And then you'll be 1 LP. And that way you just saved yourself about 3 or 4 wins. So this is essentially what you want to be doing. Basically, if you are at a high amount of LP in any given division by the end of your placements, so it could be if you're high LP in Platinum 4, if you're high LP Platinum 3, it doesn't matter if you're high LP Platinum 2 or 1. So basically, if you're in the Division 4 or Division 3 with high amount of LP, you want to be dodging down to a lower amount of LP so that when you win, you're still in the same division. Because then, if you win the very next game, you can potentially skip a division and save yourself a couple of wins. Now, if you're in a tier 2 division or a tier 1 division, it doesn't really matter because you cannot skip from Platinum 2 to Diamond 4, unfortunately. And if you are Platinum 1, it's better to get into Diamond 4, making sure that you don't have to play the promos, rather than dodging and winning one, and then being at Platinum 1, 90 to 95 LP, and then win one, then you're in Diamond 4 promos, and then you need to win another 3. So that way you're also saving 3 or 4 wins. So again, if you're Division 4 or Division 3, dodge a couple of times, make sure that by the end of your placements you're still in that same division at a high amount of LP, so you can skip. If you're in a tier 2 or tier 1 division, then just keep playing because there's no potential tiers that you can be skipping anytime soon. So there's that. Now let's talk about the placement games themselves. So there are 10 games, and what people don't, maybe not everyone knows, is that the placement games give you a different amount of LP. The very first game gives you more LP than the second game, and the second game gives more than the third game, etc, etc, etc. So for the very first game, you'll get like between 55 to 65 LP. This is how usually it would be. And then already in game 2, no matter if you win or lose the first game, those LP gains will pretty much drop to around like 50 to maybe 55. And then the third game, it's gonna go even lower, so down to maybe 45 to 50. And then it's gonna keep going down like this. Maybe not this dramatically. Maybe it's only gonna go down by like 3, 4, 5 LP, sometimes maybe 10. It's hard to give you the exact number, but basically this is what is going to happen. So this means that your very first placement games are actually more important than the very last ones in terms of the amount of LP that you're getting. But also, as I mentioned previously, if you're in Division 4 or 3, that last one, you maybe actually don't want to win instantly, and you would rather actually be at a lower amount of LP and then try and win it. The reason why you don't want to lose that very last game if you're at a high amount of if you're like Platinum 3, those 80 LP as I mentioned before, the reason why you don't just want to make sure that you lose that game is because you lose MMR, and we're not interested in that, because if you lose a game, you lose MMR and your LP gains will be lower, which means that the chance of you being able to skip a division also gets lower. So that's why it's really important that we try and win as many of our placement games as possible, but we also make sure that we sit at a good amount of LP so that we potentially can skip. And we do that simply by dodging. Because every time you dodge, you don't lose a game out of your 10 games. Like you do in promos, for example. When you dodge a game in your placements, you just lose the LP and you keep your MMR. And that's why we want to try and abuse it in these different ways. So that's basically my Season 12 placements guide. If you are confused about some of the tips that I just gave you, then leave it in the comment section down below. I'll try to explain in a different way or more in details. And if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like. And if you want to get some more tips on how to climb in Season 12, then subscribe to my YouTube channel. And otherwise, I hope to see you guys in my next YouTube video or on my next live stream on Twitch. Thank you for watching, and see you guys.